Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good afternoon. Well, actually, good evening. Way past the afternoon. It is the Earthmaster here on this Wednesday night, May 24th, 2023. Living in the future. 10:03 p.m. here along the West Coast in the state of California. Latest activity shows a 1.0 here into the Northern California area, it looks like. Did see some activity ramping up, of course, down here off the coast of Panama. Earlier this evening with a 6.6 earthquake coming in just offshore, about 10 kilometers deep. We did see a little aftershock earthquake following that 6.6 at a 4.9 magnitude earthquake. Now, this earthquake did occur within the Caribbean plate here, which is it's an area that's kind of being squeezed and whatnot in between the North and the South America region. A look at the area shows the major subduction zone here on the western edge here of the Caribbean plate. And the general plate movement here across the area. Now, the Caribbean plate, very small, but again, there's two major plates up here to the north. Obviously, North American plate and the South American plate here to the south. Just getting crunched around, moved around, and subducted here in this area. A very sensitive plate area. I did pull up the historical data within this region, and it looks like specifically within this area, we did see some sixes. With the last one being back in about 2009 or so, specifically around this area of the 6.6. A 6.3 struck 1985, and also a 6.0 back in 1991. So I don't see any major large damaging earthquakes within this region. A little bit closer to the subduction zone, obviously over here, the magnitudes will get greater. And they can see obviously some sevens out there. 1974, the last major earthquake, it looks like. For the largest magnitude. Did see one back in 1992 as well, but again, this is much closer here to the Columbian Trench, where we get some of the deepest and also largest earthquakes there in those subduction zones. But specifically here off the coast of Panama, mostly sixes, and I don't think we're going to see anything larger than that taking place there. Over here across the Port of Spain area, looks like off the coast of Venezuela, 4.6 coming in prior to this activity over here in Panama City. Kind of showing you just a little shuffling around here of the plate. Also up here around the Puerto Rico Trench. I don't think we've seen anything further following that movement off the coast of Panama earlier. It looks like maybe a 2.5, the latest there on the southwestern edge of Puerto Rico. All right, let's see what we got going on up here in the California region. Lighting up slightly here along the just off the Imperial Fault, a couple smaller microquakes. Southern California in general, though, looks fairly quiet. Never fails to get these hiccups all of a sudden when as soon as I click the on button here on the microphone. Never fails. What's going on? 2.2 here on the San Andreas Fault, about 11 kilometers deep. That's the southern branch here of that plate boundary. Also a little bit of activity across the creeper segment of the San Andreas Fault. And over here around the Fish Valley Fault area, still seeing some movement. Where we did see quite a bit of earthquake activity here over the last week or so in a swarm fashion. 124 earthquakes. That's a lot of earthquake activity, right? The largest magnitude within that cluster of quakes, 4.3. About 5.3 kilometers deep. So this area did see some swarming out here earlier this year as well. Just kind of, it's a ways away from the plate boundary here, which is the San Andreas Fault. A lot of momentum and pressure does transfer to some of these smaller plate system or the fault systems out here. And just kind of keeping an eye on that. They do get some sixes up here around the northern segment of this fault system. Haven't seen that yet. It's been a little while, but we'll continue to watch that there along the California-Nevada border. Over here, Clear Lake Volcanic Field, Cobb Mountain area, rocking like crazy. Of course, this is all hydrothermal operations out there. Northern California, a little spotty up here into Oregon. Now, this is rather interesting here. Some earthquake activity popping up here at Central Oregon. Well, I can't say Central because last time I said that, the folks there in Bend corrected me. So Central Oregon, obviously Bend area, Central Coast here of the Oregon area. Seen some earthquake activity in the 2 and 1 range. Now this is just offshore, but associated here with the Cascadia subduction zone. Kind of watching this. Nothing major going on, but it is some interesting activity that kicked off early this morning. The tremor map here tonight, Cascadia tremor, shows 200. Dang, that's a little bit of an uptick here compared to last night. And over the past week, actually, 294 epicenters of tremor, mostly here at the southern end. That would be applying stress here upstream from the tremor area. Now, the tremor area is not really due east of this region. It's more south, but I think it is applying a little bit of further stress upstream into the center portion of the Cascadia subduction zone. But either way, kind of a little interesting turn of events here. We'll watch this and see if this develops into something major or not, or last somewhat weak major event. Was just back in April, early April, where we had a little series of events here. You can see it up here on the map on this chart, although it didn't really match up to any of our other prior large-scale tremor events. It was actually kind of weak. So I don't know if this is, maybe that was a false imposter type tremor event, and now we're going to see a big one. Who knows? But we'll definitely continue to watch the tremor event there along the Cascadia. Most of it there in Northern California and Southern Oregon. Again, 294 epicenters of tremor taking place there along the Cascadia. Rest of the country looks fairly quiet. Kansas, what do you got going on out there in Kansas? Beautiful Kansas near Alton. Looks like a 3.2 coming in out there at 8.9 kilometers deep. Look at the Yellowstone thumbnails here. There's that 6.6 that kicked off there in off the coast of Panama. Showed up pretty nicely there on most of the seismograph stations. Some of them don't even register it, but they're set differently in terms of picking up seismic waves. But yeah, that's the P wave and some S waves there from that 6.6 well down south. As far as Yellowstone earthquake activity goes, not a whole lot going on there. Fairly quiet there at Yellowstone. No major movement to speak of. Into the Alaska area, noticing a trend here of earthquake movement across the Aleutian Trench. Mostly microquakes, although there's some 2s and 3s here over the last 24 hours, showing a little bit of heightened activity here across the Aleutian Trench. Kuro-Kamchatka and the Japan Trench, fairly quiet. Do have a 4.5 that was coming in, looks like earlier this afternoon. Well, let's see. Let's get rid of this before I confuse myself again. I always forget to switch up from the newest to the largest quake there. Almost thought there was a 6.2 coming in. That 6.2, by the way, occurred early this morning, about 8 o'clock or so, around the Banda Sea. We haven't really seen any further migration here across the area. Looking at the EMSC model, what do we got there? 2.9 coming in to the looks like maybe off the coast of Costa Rica there, and the green flag. So they haven't really seen too much activity here across the Java Trench. I'm kind of watching this. It's stuck right now across the midsection here of the Java Trench. I'm waiting for some momentum to make its way across that plate boundary. Down here, further back into the Tonga Trench, noticing some deep earthquake activity once again outside of Fiji. This is the Tonga Trench. Now this area sees some large earthquakes and a very high slip rate into this region, 240 mm on the average. That's, if you look at the map here, these are just some of the averages I've entered into the plate tectonic map here, and that's the highest one I've seen so far here. I'm sure there's other areas that do have some other slip rate accumulation, but this is what I have for now, 240 mm per year. So a lot of large scale deep movement that takes place in this plate boundary right here, and that's obviously there today. 604 kilometers deep for a 5.0 coming in earlier this evening. So we'll continue to watch this region westward along this plate boundary, possibly for some further larger movement within this area. It's been very, very active recently. New Zealand region, quite a few threes, it looks like. And let's go ahead and check out the GeoNet servers here. Earthquakes across the beautiful New Zealand area. 3.4, it looks like 6 hours ago. North Island area. A little bit of movement around the Taupo supervolcano, it looks like about 8 hours ago for a 3.3. Glance here at the earthquake drums. Always look for some major movement here across the graphs. Doesn't look like we see anything incredible. In fact, it looks very minor here across all the drums currently. Look at the volcanic drums for the New Zealand area, and not a whole lot. A 3-pointer looks like it's showing up here, a little bit off of the Taupo supervolcano area. But overall, it looks like seismic activity there. Quiet for now across New Zealand. This is one area, though, that we're watching because of all the movement here across the Loyalty Island area. Let me bring that up here. We did see quite a bit of deep, or not deep, but quite a bit of large-scale earthquake activity. We're talking 77 earthquakes of some good-sized magnitudes, including a 7.7, 7.1, and a 6.5. And of course, many other large ones there in the mix, and I'm sure hundreds of smaller quakes within this subduction zone. Looking at some areas that may not have been hit yet is New Zealand. Very quiet here around the plate boundary. This area should catch up. Obviously, we've seen a little bit, but it's in that zone where I'm kind of watching it for some makeup activity here very soon. And a good portion of the Java Trench over here is lacking some further activity. This is the last 30 days of all magnitudes. And that's one region here as well that's kind of lacking activity. Up here along the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench, yeah, we've seen some 4s and 5s, but nothing large scale up here. And this is another major slip rate accumulated area up here. We've got major subduction zone here, at least 83 mm per year. And definitely building up some strain across this area for the next major earthquake. Aside from that, once we get across this plate boundary here, only minimal activity here according to the USGS. 4.0, an older earthquake here within this plate boundary. Most of the movement here across the Turkey area and the Mediterranean, all small microquake movement. The Atlantic Ocean fairly quiet. Not a whole lot going on there currently. South America, we got a pretty good uptick in earthquake activity here along the Chile region. Some deeper movement quakes that are taking place. Have to watch this. The general plate movement here in the area kind of shows the South America plate drifting towards the north. That could be applying the strain here across the Caribbean plate. That's where we're seeing that 6.6 there off the coast of Panama. And this is just a very complex structure of plate dynamics. And hard to say. I think if anything, the movement should, following today's activity, should work its way up here across the Middle America Trench. Just looking at the general dynamics here, we should watch this area closely here for some further subsequent movement. Looks like we did see a little bit of smaller earthquake activity making its presence known here with those 2s. But continue to watch that throughout the next couple days. All right, space weather. What do we got going on from the Solar Ham site? Looking at 99% chance for a C flare, M flare at 30, X flare remains about 5% chance or so. Now, if these sunspots are going to do something, they better hurry up because they are getting, well, they're center disk right now, as far as this one goes, but they are getting to the point of where they're going to be drifting off of the visible disk here already. 3311, let's see what that one's looking like here on the magnetic structure. 3311 is now more centered to the western side of the sun, but this area looks like has grown drastically since this morning's update. 3311 sits within here, still fairly complex, but notice this area right here, notice a little bit of different colors and intermixing of those colors, and currently is flaring slightly. That's going to be this sunspot right here. Not 3311, but what is it? 3314. So watch this here closely. It is getting fairly dynamic looking and growing drastically. A new sunspot here above 3310 as well. Let's see what we got for the latest imagery. Yeah, this one's kind of growing as well. Also, this regional sunspot just popping up out of the blue. Just goes to show you that these things can gain strength very drastically in a short amount of time. Around the eastern limb of the sun here, we got one sunspot that's worthy of watching. It doesn't look super complex. Doesn't look like it's named yet. But we'll wait for that. On the UV filter here, kind of shows a little bit of flaring from these far side sunspots. So definitely keep an eye on that. Looking at the 3-day geomagnetic forecast, fairly minimal here with only slight possibilities of the auroras at the high latitudes. Current KP index conditions here below the 3 range. Don't really expect too much in the way of any auroras at the higher latitudes, but again, there's a little bit of slight unsettled conditions here forecasted possibly over the next couple nights. Seen some large hail out there in the New Mexico area, and I think a couple tornadoes as well. Current Storm Prediction Center forecast here still calls for some enhanced potential there of severe weather tonight across eastern New Mexico and western Texas. A look tomorrow looks a lot more minimal, although a broad scale area of earthquake activity looks possible across a good portion of the states. Thunderstorm forecast here for tonight. Yeah, this is going to be late tonight, tomorrow, in the afternoon time period here. Still seeing some pretty broad areas of thunderstorm activity, but in general, severe weather threat looks to be mainly just some minor activity. I don't think we're going to see anything major. No tornado potential tomorrow. 5% chance of some wind and hail events, and that's about it. Looking out into the future, as far as the symbol goes, I kind of like to look at this. The high pressure here, ridges in the orange. We are dealing with some colder temperatures out here along the west coast. Only hit about 80 degrees today. It's 67 here at night. Slightly below average for our high temperatures. Looking over the next couple days or so, I don't see any major ridging out here across the west coast. Looks like a little trough indicating some cooler temperatures. A little bit of cooler dynamics out here for portions of the southeast. Some big time heat kicking up into the northeast and into Canada with that ridging up there. Looks like we do have another trough here of low pressure system entering into California, indicating some cooler, possibly rainier systems there for the west coast. And looking out into the future here, into the second week of June, that's how it's going to stay. It looks like the west coast is going to be underneath some troughing. Potentially that high pressure system up here into the north going to scoot over to the west a little bit. But I'm not seeing any major dynamic setup for any severe weather activity. Most of the time when we have the troughing out here along the west, that puts some high pressure activity out here in the southern plains, although it brings up some subtropical moisture here. That's what we're seeing over the next couple days there. It's similar to monsoonal moisture, but it's kind of a little early for that. Either way, some much needed precipitation out there across the desert southwest and into areas around our drought region there across western Kansas and western Nebraska area. Quick glance here at the volcano hazards map here. Let's see if we got anything going on here at Kilauea Volcano. I don't think we got anything major, but I do like to check out the most recent update here, which was put out earlier this morning. So currently not erupting, still exhibiting signs of heightened unrest. That's due to the earthquake activity. And tilt meters, of course, a little bit of swelling going on below the surface, but I don't know. It's just taking a little pause here. We didn't really check out earthquake activity out here, but let me see. Not a whole lot currently going on across the Big Island. It definitely is taking a little pause. There's a 3.1 down in Pahala. A little bit of activity here across Kilauea Volcano, but this is very minimal earthquake activity in general across that region. So just continue to watch it. All right, folks, have a good night. We'll catch you guys back out here sometime tomorrow. Have a good one. Enjoy your night, and stay safe out there, everyone.